When you're young and passionate, it's easy to believe that the whole world is wrong, and you were right. But you'd hope that young people understand the difference between beliefs and facts. Not so, apparently, with a new study suggesting that 1 in 3 young people believe that those who disagree with them on politics must be factually wrong. The think tank More in Common published a report that also found that almost half of Zoomers, those in Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012, are scared of those with different values to them. The report concludes that young people are not being taught enough at school about the importance of respecting others' opinions for a healthy democracy. Well, let's speak to UK Director of More in Common, Luke Trill. This doesn't surprise me in the slightest. We seem to be breeding a generation of little intolerance.
Well, what we found in this report was, firstly, lots of stuff which is quite encouraging about the younger generation. They're very committed to democracy. They think they can make a difference to our country, which is good. They're keen to be sort of active in discussing the issues which matter. But there was this finding that they are much more likely than older generations to think that people who disagree with them must be wrong on the facts. And there was also that finding that you mentioned as well, that they're more likely to be worried and perhaps slightly scared of the views of others, which is why we make this recommendation in the report that actually we need schools to step up and be places where young people learn, actually, it's really important to respect other points of view, that just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means that they have a different starting point. And actually, most importantly, it's actually really healthy to come together and debate this stuff rather than to close yourself off and sit in your own little ideological world without appreciating the viewpoints of others. Because occasionally, and it might surprise you, you might change your mind on something.
I mean, I feel like there's no need asking, but is this sort of sense of being scared of alternative viewpoints coming from what I'd call a monocultural setting? Are we talking very much about what is oftentimes termed liberal views?
The interesting thing is that actually that worry about the views of others kind of spans across a range of different views. And that's why we think it comes from the fact that young people from a range of different backgrounds and worldviews aren't being encouraged to engage with other people, to consider other points of view. And that's really damaging because, of course, that's really what sits at the heart of our democracy. And what we're also saying in this report is that there's obviously lots of debate around sort of free speech in universities and on campus, but that ignores the fact that, only half the population go to university. The other half of the population don't, which is why this work needs to start much earlier in schools. We should have a really vibrant citizenship curriculum which talks about British democracy, our proud history of democracy, England as the mother of all parliaments, for instance, and makes young people feel that there's something really special and that they want to go out and defend it and advocate for our democracy. And central to that is being able to disagree with someone and recognising that, that doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means they're starting from a different place.
What do you think is the main driving factor of this polarisation? Is it social media and the algorithms of social media encouraging everybody to exist inside echo chambers? Or is there something wrong with the staff caucus in many of our schools?
So I think social media is definitely a driver, and it's really interesting when we chat to parents how worried they are about the influence of social media on their children. And of course, it can cause you to funnel yourself to only follow or be friends with or, engage with those that you agree with. But I think there's something else as well. It's less about staff coming from a monoculture in schools. And it's more often that actually staff in schools can be quite worried about debating or talking about controversial issues because they think that actually, oh gosh, if we have this debate around free speech or something else, I'm going to end up on the front page of a newspaper for doing it. So we actually need to give schools and staff more confidence to engage with some of these, tricky issues and recognise actually we don't want to be sort of shielding young people from them. We want them to be engaging with them now, and they'll have a range of different views on them. And young people tend to be more liberal and progressive than older generations, and that's fine. as long as they're being exposed to these issues and have a chance to think about them and debate. So, we just need to give our schools and teachers a bit more confidence that if they do that, they'll be rewarded for it rather than, facing the risk of some sort of public controversy.
Do you think that we as a nation are therefore cultivating perennially intolerant people, or is there a likelihood that perhaps young people who might be inflexible in their viewpoints now will actually grow out of those behaviours as they reach adulthood?
I think there's definitely something in that. It was interesting. We talked in one of our focus groups with a group of people about when the Oxford students voted to take down that photo of the Queen, and the reaction from most of the people in the groups is, isn't this just what students are always like? They do these things to sort of get attention or to create a fuss. And, we saw that in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So there's definitely some part of it which is part of a natural kind of, student life. But I guess just to take a step back, what we also found in this report was that across the country, there's a really worrying disconnect between people of all ages and our democratic system. People think our democracy doesn't work for them, that it's rigged in favour of the rich and powerful. 84% of people think that politicians look down on them in the UK today, which is why we think actually getting people interested and engaged with democracy at a young age is so important, because otherwise, as we see, right throughout study, people start to turn away from it. And that's when you can end up with some really severe, extreme and worrying consequences.
Luke, thank you so much for coming on
and
discussing that today. It's a fascinating report. Sadly, I think we all kind of knew that young people are getting less and less tolerant.